If you're having low back, hip, knee, or even shoulder and wrist pain that's keeping you from squatting the way you want, then I have you covered in this video where we're gonna break down the best squat variations to train when you are in pain. Before we dive into those variations, use this as a resource to chat with your medical provider about. If you need knowledgeable medical providers, I want you to click the link in the description of this video. The Onward Physical Therapy team is a fitness-forward team of PTs around the country that can help you navigate not only rehabbing injuries, but find solutions to keep you in the gym and performing your best so that you get out of pain now and you hurt less in the future. All right, first area we're gonna break down is going to be lower back pain. If you've got lower back pain, then there are two big strategies that we wanna use. We want to either unload the spine completely, or we want to squat with a more upright torso position that's gonna help place less load on the back. So I'm gonna give you in order my 4 favorite variations to use when somebody's having back pain with squatting. Number 1 is going to be the belt squat, because the belt squat is going to completely unload the spine. So if you're not tolerating any load, this is your best variation. Now there are a number of different ways to set up the belt squat. We can hang weight from a belt squat belt. We could use a landmine setup to perform this, or best of all is if you're using a belt squat machine. I love the Squat Max MD because the weight on the Squat Max MD sits directly between your legs. It actually pulls you straight down in the exact technique you need for good squatting form. It's gonna be much better for you than lever-based systems. Those lever-based machines and systems will actually pull you forward as you drop down into the squat, and they still keep a decent amount of load on your lower back. So check out the Squat Max MD for the best variation possible. The next variation I like is the Hatfield squat, where we're holding onto something out in front of our body with a safety squat bar on our back. The Hatfield squat is a great variation for the legs. It's gonna keep a lot of strong quad stimulus on. It's gonna keep the weight relatively heavy as well, but you're gonna be able to keep a really upright torso position that for a lot of people with back pain just becomes a little friendlier of a variation there. Similar to that is the cyclist squat, where we're doing a front squat, but we have our heels elevated on something like a slant board. Again, we're gonna have a very upright torso. This is gonna become a very quad heavy squat variation. You just won't be able to move the same load that you can with the Hatfield squat, but it's still a great one to have in your playbook. Final variation is the sissy squat. This is gonna be my least favorite of these because it's gonna have the least carryover to your back squat or your front squat, but the sissy squat, we have no load at all on the back. It is just a body weight squat variation that is really tough on the quads. The next area we're gonna jump into is going to be hip pain. Specifically in the squat, what people most frequently deal with is hip impingement, whereas the hip flexes, you get that pinchy feeling in the front of your hip. So similar to the back squat, a lot of times just having a more upright torso here is going to help out a lot. So my favorite variation to go with is going to be the front squat, because compared to the back squat, the front squat has a more upright torso position. If we need to scale that back even more and be more aggressive with our substitutions, we can also jump into the cyclist squat that we talked about with the back pain edition here. We can also look at doing something like a box squat. Because we can raise the height of the box, we can then adjust the squat range of motion that we're training in to not bother the hips. So go just high enough on the box that you're not getting any reproduction of your pain, but the box squat's gonna let you stay really heavy in your squatting variation. So you'll get some really solid carryover when you get back to full depth back and front squats if you're performing the box squat. And then the final variation is also going to be the sissy squat for the same reasons that we talked about with the back. Next, let's jump into the knee. Now, the really important thing to understand when it comes to knee pain is that the more vertical your shin angle is, the less load is placed on the knee. Now, we have gone way too far in the past with our recommendations about this, where we told people that you should never let your knees go over your toes, and that was an over-exaggeration here. When the knees go over toes, we do see about a 22% increase in force on the knees, according to research, but that increases the stress and force on the hips and the low back by 1,000%. So we don't want to rob Peter over here to pay Paul. We just need to understand that we can shift how somebody's positioned based on where they're in a little bit more pain. Again, back pain, more upright torso, knees more forward is good. Knee pain, we might want to sit back in our squat a little bit more with a vertical shin angle. And for that, the 2 best variations to use when somebody's having knee pain and wants to keep a vertical shin angle is going to be the box squat, where we're really sitting back on the box as we descend down and trying to not let those knees go over very far. Or the second is the Spanish squat. With the Spanish squat, we have a band behind the knees. And as that athlete stands up, that band is resisting their knees extending. This is a really great quadricep specific accessory exercise for the squat. So I highly recommend that as an accessory exercise, but at times this can be a great one to include when you're not tolerating any forward knee movement at all in the knee pain. The final thing that we could talk about regarding knee pain is that a lot of times simply going from a back squat to a front squat, even though the front squat has usually a little bit more of a forward knee position, the load is significantly lower. And I find a lot of athletes tolerate the front squat a little bit more when they're having knee pain compared to the back squat. Some people will be the exact opposite, but play around yourself and see if one of those is better than the other. The final area we're gonna talk about in terms of modifying around pain is going to be the upper body. So the wrist gets challenged a lot in the front squat. The shoulder gets challenged a lot in both the front squat and the back squat. So we need to still be able to overload the legs with heavy weight if we can't load those two joints up. By far, my favorite variation to use when somebody's having wrist or shoulder pain is going to be the safety squat bar. So the safety squat bar lets us hold the weight with these handles out in front of our body. So it's a much more forgiving position on the shoulder and the wrist than anything else. So that's gonna be our number one variation. The number two variation that we're gonna go to is we're gonna look at a front squat, but instead of holding the barbell in the front rack position, we're gonna tie our weightlifting straps to the bar and we're gonna hold those straps. So it's gonna take the wrist out of the equation, and it's also gonna slightly change our shoulder position. So we won't have to be as externally rotated. We'll be able to hold a little bit more neutral. That can be a lot more forgiving. If you like this variation, even better than those straps is going to be using the Versa hooks made by a company called Versalifts. These are a phenomenal piece of equipment if you're somebody that gets any upper body issues when it comes to the front rack position. A lot of people will use a zombie squat during this time period, and I think that's an okay variation to use. The problem with the zombie squat is when our arms are out in front of our body and we're just holding that bar in place with our shoulders, it becomes a lot more upper body limited in terms of the weight we can lift than it is lower body. So you might find that you don't get enough of a leg stimulus with a zombie squat, but it is a decent modification to include. It's just not my favorite compared to the previous two that we have discussed. And then the final one, we're going back to the tried and true belt squat where we're completely unloading the shoulders and the wrist and the low back. That can be another great variation to keep a strong leg stimulus on when the shoulders aren't letting you tolerate any loading.